So I'll start my first remarks. Hi, my name is Hubert David. I work at the Éducalois in Montreal. I'm part of the PLEI Connect project. So welcome to our first webinar, the challenges faced in creating and maintaining a bilingual website. And here's a bit of how it's going to happen today. So our schedule for today, so I'm doing the welcome, as you can see. I'll be your host for this series of webinars in both French and in English. So my name is Hubert David. I'm the head of partnerships and innovation at the Éducalois. We're a PLEI organization in Quebec, in the province of Quebec, and we're part of PLEI, the Public Legal Education Association of Canada. Right after, we'll have a quick overview of the PLEI Connect project by Brenda Rose, who's the CLICLOP program coordinator at Courthouse Libraries of British Columbia. She's also the national project coordinator for the PLEI Connect project. After that, we'll have Public Legal Education and Information Service of New Brunswick's experience with bilingual website. Presenting will be mainly Deborah Doherty, Executive Director, and JD Blizzard, who's probably present, who did the French webinar yesterday, and who helps out Deborah with their bilingual websites. And finally, we'll have Éducalois' experience with our Editor-in-Chief, Caroline Boilly, who's in charge of our website and all the challenges that go with that. So we'll start off with Brenda. Brenda at CLBC. So Brenda, can you unmute yourself, and I'll pass you the baton.
Thank you. Thanks, Hubert. And now I have the power. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to our first English webinar. We actually did the French version yesterday. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the PLEI Connect project and how we've reached where we are today. So I'll just start off by saying PLEI stands for Public Legal Education and Information. I know that we should never assume that our audience knows everything, so I'm just going to start by saying that, and I'm going to refer to it as PLEI, just in the interest of time. So a brief recap. In 2010-2011, PLEI producers from across Canada explored ways that we can use technology to develop and deliver PLEI through a project called Just a Click Away. So this was a project led by Courthouse Libraries, and it included 3 components. It included, oh great, now my slides working. There we are, sorry, pardon me. It included sessions on social media in Montreal at a conference hosted by Éducalois called Dire le Droit. It included a series of webinars on portal websites, and it included a national conference in Vancouver. It was a 2-day conference exploring the use of technology to deliver PLEI. Oh, pardon me. Okay, an intended outcome of Just a Click Away was to identify strategies to develop and support effective practices using technology to deliver PLEI. And so after the Vancouver conference, our project advisory committee met to discuss next steps. So they recommended exploring ways to use technology to support the PLEI community to share technical knowledge and tools. The goal was to foster a culture of sharing that would continue on an ongoing basis. So they wanted to increase the capacity for cooperation and collaboration within the Canadian PLEI community on technology-related initiatives. So after the conference, we produced a report as well as this really kind of cool graphic recording, which highlighted promising practices and suggested next steps. And it included a recommendation to apply for further funding to continue the project. So as a result, we submitted a funding application to the Law Foundation of Ontario's Access to Justice Fund for a new project called Just a Click Away Phase 2, Supporting a Culture of Sharing. And our application was successful, and we've been working on this new project since the fall of 2011. So one of the things that we realized right away was that in order for it to be a national project, we needed to serve both the Anglophone and Francophone communities. And we also found that we needed to use a name to describe the project that would make sense to our audience and would also translate well into French. And Just a Click Away 2 didn't really cut it. So Just a Click Away 2 became PLEI Connect, la Connexion Vige. So that is the new title that we're working with for this entire initiative. So as mentioned, we have project partners for PLEI Connect, la Connexion Vige, and that's CLEO, Community Legal Education Ontario, Courthouse Libraries BC, Educalois, and ProvNet in BC. I also want to just take a moment and acknowledge and thank our funders for this project, the Law Foundation of Ontario's Access to Justice Fund and the Department of Justice Canada. Without their support, this project and many others would not be possible. So the purpose of PLEI Connect. The purpose of the project is to support sharing, learning, and the development of best practices in using technology for PLEI. PLEI Connect is open to anybody in Canada who's interested in PLEI. It's for organizations, executive directors, decision makers. It's for the in-house web developers. It's for your person running your Facebook, your Twitter accounts, your writers, editors of PLEI materials. It's aimed at community workers who may just do PLEI off the corner of their desk. So there's 4 components to PLEI Connect. There's an online community of practice, a series of webinars, a series of web labs, and I'll talk about that in a sec, and the development of best practices. So in terms of the community of practice, I'd like to tell you a bit about how it was developed. So to gather requirements for this site, we looked at the Just a Click Away conference report. We also sent an online survey to people who had been interested in the Just a Click Away initiative and gathered a lot of information from them. And in addition to this information, we added a dash of MOSA. So for those of you who haven't had the pleasure of meeting MOSA, she was the presenter at the Just a Click Away conference. She's also the technical guru behind the ProvNet website, and she's the community outreach coordinator and the technical wizard for PLEI Connect. The report, the survey, and MOSA have all led to the development of the online community of practice, pleiconnect.ca. So the online community of practice is a private space where PLEI practitioners can have frank discussions about what's working and can learn from each other's initiatives. There are already several discussions happening on the site, several topics including use of online surveys, using technology to reach disadvantaged youth. There's a great article on developing mobile apps, tools for user testing. So we invite you to sign up, have a look, and participate. The online community of practice is a place where you can share projects that others have worked, and ask questions so you can learn from the experience of other PLEI practitioners from across Canada, or even just the person who works across the street from you. So right now the site's available in English, and we're currently doing requirements gathering for the French component of the site, and we hope to have the French site launched at the beginning of 2013. We've built the online community of practice to allow for growth so we can respond to the needs of the users. And soon we'll be adding new features including a resource mashup, an innovation gallery, and groups. So the resource mashup is a space reserved for social resource sharing. You can search for helpful PLEI and tech links, videos, webinars, PDFs, databases, and other resources and media uploaded by your peers. And then you can contribute your own to the mix. The MashUp resources will be tagged and organized by type, and you can bookmark them for future reference. We'll also have an innovation gallery, which is a place where you can feature your organization's PLEI and tech projects. And you can also show community members what you're working on. So you can have a look at projects in the innovation gallery to learn what's happening in other parts of the country and get inspired for new projects of your own. The groups feature is an organizing space where community members can collaborate with one another on key topics and projects. So these features are going to be coming out over the next little while. Now, the webinars, this is the second component of the project, and during these webinars, we're going to be learning about key topics relating to PLEI and technology. So we're running 12 webinars, 6 in French and 6 in English. They're free, but you need to register ahead of time. And as mentioned, they're for pretty much anybody who's interested in PLEI in Canada. So our first webinar is on the challenges of bilingual sites, which we're going to be covering in just a few moments. And at the beginning of December, we'll be looking at evaluation tools. The remaining webinars will be in 2013. And the topics for these webinars will come out of the discussions that happen on the online community of practice. So there's another good reason for you to sign up and to participate, and you can help us to determine what the future webinar topics are going to be. The third component of the PLEI Connect project is a series of web labs. So you may ask, what the heck is a web lab? So we're sort of figuring this out ourselves. A web lab is an online workshop. So the idea here is that participants can engage in real hands-on learning by using desktop sharing tools and having facilitated discussion with subject matter experts. The web labs will provide demonstrations on how to do things, and participants will learn by doing rather than just watching. It's a new format for us, and so this will be a learning experience for everybody involved. Again, we're going to do 12 web labs, 6 in French, 6 in English. And they're also free, but the registration is going to be limited. We want to have a smaller number of participants as there's really hands-on workshops, and we want everybody to have the opportunity to participate and contribute. The first web lab will be on Tuesday next week. There's the times there, 9:30 Pacific time for the English and 11 a.m. Pacific time for the French. And the fourth component of the PLEI Connect project is developing best practices. So these will come out of the discussions on the online community of practice, the webinars, and the web labs. And the best practices will be available in English and in French. Just going to touch really quickly on the evaluation for the project. This whole project is about constant improvement, and already we've received just really excellent feedback from users of the online community of practice, and we've been able to make changes to the site to make it easier to use. This is going to be an ongoing process. So in terms of more formal evaluation, we'll be looking at measuring how this project helps PLEI producers to do their work more effectively. We're going to use surveys and interviews to talk to our project participants, and we'll look at how often you're using the online community of practice. We'll also look at using existing tools used to measure online communities of practice. There's a self-assessment tool we came across through a Scottish website where it measures sort of 5 different levels of engagement. So we're trying to use what's already out there and adapt it for our purposes. So there you go. That's the PLEI Connect project. If you haven't already done so, I'd encourage you to check out pleiconnect.ca and sign up. Take a moment to look through the site, answer some questions, pose some questions, and please send us your feedback. We really look forward to connecting with you through the online community of practice and the other events associated with this project. So, Hubert, I will pass things back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Deborah, can you hear us? Can you speak? That's what I thought. Okay. Let's see. Deborah, can you speak now?
Sorry, it's Caroline. I just wanted to say, Deborah, I had the same problem yesterday. You need to redial the phone using the event info tab and using the right code. I had to do it a few times yesterday.
So I have to hang up and dial in again?
Oh, no, you're in now.
Okay.
I can hear you now.
Okay,
so
go
ahead. So no, you're in, Deborah. We can hear you.
Okay. So I should start?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just give you the rights to do so.
Okay.
So go ahead, Deborah.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting us at Public Legal Education in New Brunswick to talk to you about the challenges of creating and maintaining a bilingual website. Now I'm just, how do I advance my slide here? Okay, up at the top. Thank you. Yeah. Because there's potentially people on this webinar who really don't know the PLEI community, I just would say that we go back to 1989 when we were established. So we were operating in the days long before Facebook and Twitter and websites. But we've moved into that era as time progressed. We operate as a nonprofit charitable organization, and we're physically located in the Department of Justice, the New Brunswick Department of Justice, which gives us fantastic in-kind support to help with some of the challenges of maintaining and creating a bilingual website. We educate and inform the public about the law, and our actual mandate says in both official languages. So all content that we do, whether it's a video, a user guide, a pamphlet, a quiz, whatever we do, workshops, we have to do some in English, some in French. We have to operate in both official languages. Very few outside resources exist for us that are truly bilingual. Often other groups will ask us, can we link to your fabulous family law videos, your 13 short family law videos? And we say, of course. But for us, there might be fabulous videos out there and they're only in English or they're only in French. And we find it very difficult to link to resources of one language only. So it's quite a challenge for us. So generally, the cost and translation is a challenge with everything we do, our hard copy paper resources as well. The bilingual staff that answers the phone and is providing frontline services, our toll-free lines, they all have to be bilingual. When things are translated, we may have already focus tested the English and for plain language and readability, but we often have to do it again in French because we have access to the Translation Bureau of Government, which is fabulous, or we would not be able to be a bilingual service. But then we often will have the stakeholders, whether it's seniors or youth, review the material. Do they understand it? We may have to change the language to make it more readable, which can be quite upsetting to the Translation Bureau that we're making changes and they won't officially stand by some of the changes we make because it's not what they gave us, but that's another problem. You know, when you're bilingual, branding yourself, your name, your logos, your slogans, to come up with something like Click Law worked well in English, but to come up with something that is short and memorable and usable in English or in French, but let alone bilingual, it's always a challenge. And we often work in partnership and collaboration with other community agencies, and often we're approached to work on a project that a group wants to do in English only, and they have funding to do an English resource and print it. And we find it very difficult to be able to do that unless there's a commitment that it will be translated and available in both languages and printed. And again, then it's trying to track down the money to do the French side. Specifically with respect to developing a website, there's the cost and branding, but the website domain names, and I'll speak to all of these in a minute. There's the indexing of the content on the site. We don't do it bilingually. We do it in only one language in behind the site, which causes some issues with the public presentation of the site. There's the seamlessness between the French and English side of the sites, because some PLEI groups that have bilingual resources only have an English website. And then when you look under publications, family law, it'll say publications available in other languages. They don't have another whole other site. Data collection with a bilingual website has lots of challenges. People like to see videos nowadays as a new way of learning, and again, for us, that can be a challenge, and social media is a challenge, and I'll speak to all of these. But to give you an example, we started off with legal-info-legal.md.ca, one domain name for our public legal education site, Service public d'éducation d'information juridique. It is one domain, and all of our data is collected under that one site. The website in the back is maintained in English. When we started creating new websites for other specialized topics, we did a lot of focus testing. People said, don't bury them on that website, Legal Info Legal. Create the websites and give them a name that people can remember, so you can put it on bookmarks and magnets and posters and pens and some of your promotional materials. So we have familylawNB.ca and Droit de la Famille NB.ca and Youth Justice NB and the Healing Journey .ca. All of these have slightly different twists. Family Law NB, it's two separate domain names. And I'm just going to go on. It's two separate domain names. But for the public, they go to a splash page that says English or French, and they choose English or French, and they go into the site. We also have sites where we have created two separate splash pages that look identical. So we'll have when you put the English URL in the browser, it takes you to a splash page where you choose English or French. But if you put the French in, you go to a separate splash page. Anyway, it's always a challenge to how you're going to actually create the bilingual site and have the public see it as bilingual when you have created two separate sites. I hope I'm making sense. This shows you the public legal education. You can choose to go in as English or French. But in the browser, if you would, it says legal, that one's okay. It says legal info, it's bilingual. Okay, let me see. I shortened this, so I took out some of the other examples. Bilingual branding, again, when we ask the community agencies and law firms and so on to use our logo and make hyperlink so that their clients or their viewers can link to our sites. Some want an English only if they're in St. Stephen or Woodstock. Up in Hamilton or Bathurst, they for sure want a bilingual one, and others want a French one, you know, if they're in the Acadian Peninsula. So we have to think of that when we're designing. We don't usually only have one logo. We have a French and an English and a bilingual. With the Droit de la Famille, family law, if you typed www.droitdelafamille.ca into the browser and went to it, it would convert to familylawmb.ca because the site is actually maintained, even though it's two separate sites. Going to the splash page is back to English. Another challenge is the synchronicity. People have to be able to seamlessly navigate between the English and French. And you say why? Because we are a bilingual agency. Many groups will see a special event or a publication, and they'll say, oh my heavens, I'd better get the French of this too to share. And they'll click on Francais. And some sites will take you back to their splash page or back to the top of the navigation bar, not to the exact same pub or the spot where you were on the English site, and vice versa. And that's very frustrating for people. New Brunswickers want to see that seamless transmission from English to French. So our sites are mirror images of one another. And where this may cause the greatest challenge for us is news items. So we have a what's new, and we enter postings. Sometimes we're entering a posting about an event that we're doing in English only or in French only, but on the other side of the website, if we don't put the parallel announcement, the two sides of the site would go out of sync. Thus, we post them on both sides. So it looks like this. On the French side of the site, we announce in French a workshop, and it says offre en anglais seulement, and it's an English workshop, as you can see, for doing your own divorce in Woodstock. And then, and of course, in the English side of the site, it's English. In French, where there's a French workshop in Bathurst, we advertise it in English, but we say it's only in English, and you see the poster is in French. So we always have to do everything on both sides of the site, which sometimes may not seem to make sense, but that's how we keep our site synchronized. This, of course, poses a challenge with social media because one is supposed to be on Twitter and so on spontaneous, but we are equal opportunity Twitterers, and so whenever we tweet about our events and so on, we have to do so in both official languages because we have an English and French Facebook, an English and French Twitter, and so on. Sometimes when you have a Twitter and everything is just fine in English, 140 characters, and you have it translated, it's a lot more. It's a lot longer than 120 characters, so we have to be really careful with English. We keep it as short as possible, so when it's translated, it'll fit in French. We have devised ways to have constant tweets by taking sound bites from our publications, and having them in English and French because the publications are English and French, and then matching them up to national, provincial, international events that are going on so that they seem timely and relevant. Again, I think I've sort of mentioned this, but because the sites are bilingual and the back end of the site is in English, we index all of the publications. So when we go in to update text, we can easily find them and not we have over 200 publications. So this is each French document has an alias in English so that they match up and we can get to them quickly to do our updates. But this means that sometimes the browser text when you're on the French side of the site appears in English, which sometimes will upset people. So look, if you want to print a page, you're on the French side of our website and you wanted to print this page. At the top it would say Droit de la famille MB, Ressources en ligne pour le public, and down below you see it says www.familylawmb.ca/French/index. Not a big issue, but sometimes people will say, how come the French side of your site has this English text at the bottom? I printed it off and shared it. You go into the French side of the site, if you cut and paste the URL and send it to someone saying, I found this fabulous site, the URL will be in English, and people go, what? I thought you were sending me a French site. Until you open it, you don't really know that it is a French site. So it does pose some problems, and we tried it in multiple different ways to see on our various sites to see how best to get around it. But for us, with the volume and that our working language in the office is in English, we just have that as a challenge sometimes. Technical problems that arise from presenting a bilingual website is we have online order forms and fillable registration forms for events, evaluations, and so on. And quite often when we get the results of that, there'll be some gobbledygook because the software doesn't support the accents. So, for example, our online order form arrives to us with, you see the yellow are words that the accents were not understood by the software package and show as gobbledygook. But we know what they are for the most part, and nobody else sees it but us. But sometimes in evaluations where people are giving us information that is new to us, it may take a while to figure out if it's been transformed like this. Web statistics are another challenge. Our funders and we want to know the traffic on the site and what's being downloaded and viewed and so on. And because a website like our Family Law NB has actually 2 domain names, there's actually 2 separate Google Analytic packages that are running behind those sites, and each has its own database. So we collect the statistics in English, and we collect the statistics in French, which would look like this. This is when we started off our Family Law website. There were the English statistics, there were the French. But when we have a report to the funders, of course, you want to say overall how many people viewed or how many unique visitors. So we have to take out the old calculator and do it manually to integrate the French and English side. And then sometimes when you have the most viewed or the most downloaded, the Francophones will be downloading and viewing the most popular PDFs or publications, and they might be different than on the English side. So when we do the overall, instead of saying the top 2, we might say the top 5, because the top 3 are English and the other top 2 are French, and overall we have to give 5 to get the top English and French. And I think, as I mentioned, videos are typically not available in both official languages. So even with the province, when Manitoba gave them permission to use the Parenting After Separation course for the sake of the children, and then they collaborated with PLEI to work with a film company to create the French versions of a lot of the little videos and new English and French legal considerations video. So we have become quite adept at creating videos over the years, and even the provincial government often will ask us to work in collaboration with them on legal issues. But one of the perks of working in both official languages is that some of our websites, like the Healing Journey, which is a site on family violence prevention in Aboriginal communities, and we worked with Aboriginal groups in New Brunswick who at first were only interested in creating an English site, and we said, well, if we're going to be partners, then we can leverage and bring in Justice Canada. You can bring in INAC, Indian and Northern Affairs Canada, and together we'll have a bilingual website, which we did. And then Indian and Northern Affairs liked it so much, they asked whether it would be possible to convert it into a national site and have national resources and so on. So it went from being a New Brunswick website for Aboriginal communities in New Brunswick to being a site for all of Canada. And again, when we do resources like a video on the role and responsibilities of board members and all the resource materials that go with that, which are quite generic in nature, it's quite easy for us to create that product as a national product because we're already going to do it in both official languages. And that's about it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Deborah, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. We'll do questions at the end of the webinar. We'll have time today. Yesterday we didn't have time in English, So we'll be able to do, in French, sorry. So now we'll move to Éducalois' experience, and I'll pass the baton over to Caroline. Caroline Boilly, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Excellent.
Hi. I'm just going to load the PowerPoint. Here we go. All right, so as Hubert mentioned earlier, Éducalois is a nonprofit organization, and so we inform Quebecers about their legal rights. And of course, we do that in the field of legal education and plain language, and we use our website. We've been using our website for 12 years now to do this. Let's start with some stats, actually, to show you the usage of the website and the comparison with the usage in English, which is for us. So, because we have obviously the opposite situation as what New Brunswick has. So our total visits yearly is about 1.5 million. For Anglophones on our website, it's much lower. It's about 5% of our visits, so it comes to about a little under 80,000 for last year. And it's much lower, but we have to remember that for Anglophones to get information on legal issues in Quebec, it's very important to have this information coming from us or somebody else in Quebec, because being the only province doing civil law, it's very important, because if they go on a website in English somewhere else in Canada for family law, for example, they might not get the right information. So I'm going to talk a lot more about content and the challenges we have about managing content when, like including the translations. So Éducalois, I said already, is 12 years old. We have articles on specific legal issues. Here's an example on the rights of grandparents to have a relationship with their grandkids. That was part of our category on divorce law. We have articles explaining the legal system. We have articles explaining a legal aspect in the news. We have a glossary. We have youth articles, and they include legal issues, the system, and on careers, which is also part of our website, so that we have a youth section. And we also have videos. And for the videos, we produce them, and what we've done to reduce the cost of translation, so we do all the translations in-house, and we're also the actors in the videos, so we don't have to pay 2 actors to do our videos, because, we're free. So that represents a legacy of over 800 articles, and generally these articles are written in French first. Sometimes they're written in English first if we have a project that warrants that, but generally it's written in French first. So there's a legacy, and there's also the fact that with our site is 12 years old, so a lot of our articles that were written in the beginning were 12 years old. So in the past couple of years, we've been rewriting a lot of our articles to make sure that they were written for the web with better readability principles, making sure that they were shorter, had one theme, used bullets, like just much clearer articles for readers, and using SEO principles, search engine optimization, to make sure that our articles would be better found through Google, considering that we get 80 to 85% of our traffic coming from natural searches in Google. And so, of course, we use those principles to make sure we come out in Google, and we have to think about keywords, for example, in French and in English. And of course, we never forget like plain language is our #1 principle. We don't use those SEO principles to the max if they hinder on the quality of the plain language. So that means that we've been rewriting a lot of our articles, and so we have 19 employees, and many are bilingual, but only 1 English legal writer. And so we had to find solutions, obviously. Historically, at Éducalois, articles have been translated by a range of people. At the beginning, law students, interns. Some were excellent, some were, didn't produce as good or written in plain language articles, so we had to go over them a lot, and that was very time consuming. And so, as I said, we have only one person internally who can actually write, so she was translating a lot, but then she's a lawyer and she should be writing articles instead of translating articles that somebody else wrote. So recently what we've been doing is we've been establishing a relationship with a couple of legal translators, and we've been training and really building a long-term relationship, because there are choices. Deborah was talking about it. There are choices at some point. The real official translation might be a certain word, but it's not plain language, it's not clear. And so by giving a lot of feedback and working with the same few people, like the knowledge transfer and the decisions, the plain language decisions stay, and it's been much more efficient. So I've given a couple of examples here in French, French words that are quite easily understood in French because they're part of the regular language, but then we got to having these translations, and de facto spouse is the official translation in the civil code, but nobody uses those, nobody uses that, and so we had to come up with solutions. And so, for example, in the case of patrimony, when we speak of wills, we will speak of wealth instead of patrimony, even though that's the way it's written in the law. And for annuity, we'll add definitions. For dwelling, for logement, which is much broader than apartment, we'll choose apartment, or if it needs to be a house, then we'll specify, because these are the reality of languages, when on one side the word may mean much more than on the other side, but it just becomes, you need to make sure that you're well understood. And de facto spouse, we've gone back to common law spouse, which is well understood, even though that's not the word that's used in the civil code. So that way, because we're working with just a few people and they've been working with us for a while, then that knowledge stays, and we don't have to redo the work all the time. So of course, all this costs money, and we have a budget to maintain our articles in both languages, but the quantity is so high, especially since we've been rewriting a lot of our articles, that we try a lot to make the translations part of the projects that we will take. So, for example, if it's in project, we'll make sure that in the project, when we pitch or when we ask for money, like when we have a partnership, like the external cost of translations will be included in the project, and that the internal cost will be included as well. Because yes, we have a good relationship with translators, but we have people internally who review the work anyways, and that. And because of the knowledge transfer, of course, like it's not just one or two people who can do it, and it's been much faster that way. Out of project, now that becomes a bit harder, and so, for example, we had a project on family law divorce, and so we ended up with 60 new articles in French, but we did not have part of the project an included budget for translation. So that is our new section, so that's a lot of new articles, as you can see, and so we had to make choices because we couldn't right away translate everything on our budget. So we made choices, and so we pick articles because they're now written in just one theme per article. We could go like, okay, so we'll take all the core articles, translate them right away, and then bit by bit we'll make sure that we get the whole section translated. But it might not be right away. Now, that's for the project and the new articles that we're rewriting, but of course we also have to do maintenance, and so I'm just showing you right now like the idea of an article that's been, that was modified after a law was changed in Quebec. So that all gets done by Francophones internally, so not only do we have to get new articles translated, but all this stuff gets, the new revisions need to be translated as well. So we now can use our freelancer translator because she's worked with us so long that she understands our processes, and that's much faster that way. So of course, what I'm saying, what the choices, what happens that we have holes in our content. We are not obliged to have a mirror site, so we try to tend towards that, but then sometimes we can't. So we have to be honest and tell the reader and offer them options. So here's a few examples of what we are doing. So that's our actual site that's going to be online just for a few weeks more, because we're going through a new site. But that's one of the examples. So, you know, like the article on drinking and driving was being reviewed due to the law change, and then in French it got put back on the website quicker than in English. So in English we gave the option to people to go back to read the article in French, and then of course as soon as it was back on, we put it back on. On our new website, what we've done too is that within the English section, we are giving we are letting the reader know of all the articles that are available in French but that have not been translated yet, so they can choose to read them anyway, so they don't have to go switch on the French website to have access to that content. And that's another area of the website where you'll see again the French-only markings for the articles who are available in French only. And give them options to make sure that if by any chance there's a mistake or there's a page that is not existing yet in English, that they can find what they are looking for, which doesn't happen very often, but at least that way we've given a lot of options for people to find what they're looking for. There you go.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you. I will now ask you all to send your questions. We have one that was sent just now by Ben Russo. How was the initial experience with becoming actors and actresses? This is addressed to Caroline. How did you get into it? What was the decision motivation for creating films knowing there was no funding for outsourcing them? So Caroline, maybe if you want to answer that. I could too, but I'll let you for now.
Well, why don't you start with the decisions at the beginning?
Yeah,
because
actually,
I was
Caroline
there.
yeah, exactly. Caroline wasn't with us initially. We did a test initially. We knew that we needed video. We needed video for all kinds of reasons. The main one was that we thought we could reach a different audience and reach a broader audience, especially people that have reading disabilities or people like that. We thought a video would help, and we had the expertise in-house at that time. We had one of the lawyers here that actually had film experience. So he decided just to grab a camera and that we would film the first one. And we realized that with the actors union in a guild in Quebec, that it would be too complicated, and if we hired somebody. So we knew that if we had somebody in-house be the actor, that it would be cheaper, and then we wouldn't have all the union problems. And basically because the person is paid already by the Éducalois, right? So that's how it started, but then since then we've actually have a filmmaker, so we do have outsourcing for that. We have an actual filmmaker that is helping us, and who's doing the what's the expression I'm looking for, Caroline? Les animations, the animations and everything. So
yeah, he shoots, edits. and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's it. So any more questions? Use the Q&A section at the bottom right. Caroline, did you have a question for Deborah?
Put me on the spot.
Or Deborah for Caroline, actually. You're unmuted. No.
Oh, I'm unmuted.
Yes.
I'm not really sure. I'll mention that for certain video projects, we have had funding to actually have the film company recruit the actors and so on. But the 13 videos we did on our family law website was all volunteer actors. So JD Blizzard, who's does the toll-free line for the Sake of the Children program and enters all the data for our website or all the content on our website. He did the video for the Sake of the Children program. He did it in English, and then we shot it again in French. And with the lawyers who did, you know, how do I start a divorce proceeding and stuff, we had one did it in English, and then the next weekend, because we were doing it at the court, so we had to do it evenings and weekends, the Francophone lawyer came in and we did this. It was scripted, so she came in and did the French one, and fortunately they did it pro bono, so again, and they did a great job, so that saved a lot of money not having to pay actors.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Brenda, we have a question. Best practices, when will they be shared? Maybe if you'd want to touch on that.
Oh, yes. Thanks, Ida. The best practices, we're hoping to sort of pull them together as the project progresses, really. So what I envision right now is with this webinar and hopefully with future discussion on the online community of practice, we can come up with some points for best practices around the challenges of creating bilingual websites. I mean, I really see the best practices as a bit of a work in progress, and as we present them, we will really be counting on PLEI practitioners from across Canada to be helping us refine them and tweak them. The goal is to have a pretty comprehensive set by the end of the project, which is the summertime 2013. So yeah, as we move along with each webinar series, we will be starting to work on new sets of best practices.
Excellent. Thank you. We have another question, this time for Caroline. Have you noticed significant success as a result of the focus on SEO vocabulary?
Yes, and I think we've had success on two different levels. So of course, it's little by little. So we have seen a little bit of increase. Of course, it's harder to measure because we have so many articles. We have to really see which articles, you know, like all the keywords that are attached to an article, what they've been using, and et cetera. So yes, we've seen an increase, but I would say too that one of the biggest advantages actually of using SEO is that it actually helps us a lot with plain language, because we're using the Google tools that allow us to know what people type to get to any kind of topic, and sometimes we're actually surprised to see what people type, because, you know, like we'll think, for example, that, you know, even if, you know, we have a lot of experience with plain language, we'll think that something is well understood or not well understood, and then we go and use the tools to find out what keywords people use, and then we'll find that a lot of people will attach definition to a word that we thought everybody knew, or vice versa, or, you know, so we've, for example, we had an article that was talking about a bunch of difficulties with the garde des enfants, the shared custody. Sorry. And so we found that one of the big requests was, my son doesn't want to go to his dad anymore, or my daughter doesn't want to go to his dad or to her mom. And so we actually split that into a different article to address that issue, and we've used those words specifically, and it's been quite a good response.
Excellent, thank you. There's another question from Fiona McCool, actually from Clio. What opinion, advice can you offer on the issue of keeping things up to date at different rates? For example, at Clio, we will make something live in English before it is available in French, so that we do not force delays for all users, etc. I know that's something we do definitely at Éducalois. So, Caroline, do you?
Yes, we do the same, and one of the decisions that we've made was to make sure that all of our articles would be mirror. So we're not writing an article in English that will be a mashup of 2 or 3 articles in French, because then we begin to have, you know, like we're doubling and tripling the load of the keeping things up to date for the people who are keeping things up to date. So yes, we will delay a little bit the translation, the publication of the translated article, to make sure that everything is the same in French and in English, to reduce the load on our staff.
And Deborah, how about you?
Well, it's our policy that that nothing gets released until it's in both official languages. So we've had some evaluations where the working document was in English, and we haven't had it translate, and we don't put it on the website. If it's 50, 60-page evaluation, then it would have to wait till there's a French version. It's just our policy that as we update or as we create materials, they have to be available. Sometimes with projects like workshops where we're doing English and French, and we might be doing, you know, 6 English and 4 French, we might start with an English workshop and a couple weeks later have a French. So in that, you know, they're not coming out simultaneously, but on our website, nothing really gets posted until it's been reviewed or changed, updated in both official languages.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I have another question here that came to me by chat, actually, so in private. But Caroline, it's an excellent point, actually. We're being asked about what do we do with Francophones coming from outside Canada, the whole question about jurisdiction and how do we direct them?
Yes, that was quite a challenge, actually, because last year we found out that way too many people were coming from France, and actually even on our English website, a lot of people were coming from Great Britain or the States or the rest of Canada. And, well, obviously the law doesn't apply. Most of the articles don't apply to them. So, but however, we do have a lot of people in France, for example, who have sons and daughters who live here, study here, so they want to know what's going on, or they want to immigrate, or they want to know things about Quebec law, and so we can't just not let them in. So what we've done actually is we're using a pop-up window that detects where people are coming in onto the website from, and we're giving them a message explaining to them, a bilingual message telling them that everything on the website has to do with law applicable to Quebec, and that if that's what they want, then please continue, but if not, then the articles won't apply to them.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, you know what? It's 1:32, people, and thank you so much. That's all for us right now. I would greatly invite you to take part into our web lab. As we said, it's limited. We want to limit the amount of people that take part in it. But if you are interested, I invite you to send an email to Gina at éducalois.qc.ca. I'm just writing her address in yellow. That's not very good. Let me change colors. And write again. So Gina@educalois.qc.ca if you want to take part into our web labs that will occur next week. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for your participation. A lot of questions, and thank you so much to our funders again, Justice Canada and the Legal Foundation of Ontario. All of this would not be possible without them, so we're very thankful to them, and to our panelists today, Caroline and Deborah. Thank you so much, and Brenda also from CLBC. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you at next time. Bye.